Hi, everybody. Welcome into 9 Acres of Nothing podcast.
How
So
do you
I'm
like?
Ginger. Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and I'm Dale with 9 Acre Family Farms. And how do you guys like our new name? We're
Yes, I love
playing.
that.
Yeah,
We're playing with different ones. Yeah, I like 9 Acres of Nothing podcast,
I do
but it's
too.
all not for nothing. Okay, so
That
don't
is
forget
right.
that.
It's all not for nothing.
Everything we do. Okay, so how are you today, Dale?
I am doing great. How about you, Ginger?
I'm doing really good, really good. And I think we decided to switch up another thing, not just the name. We decided to start with something new.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think we're going to start
Okay.
off. Um, of course, if you follow both of our channels, you know that we're both faith based. We both believe in God and that Christ saved ourselves, and that we do um, work on our homesteads and we live our lives to glorify God. And
Mm-hmm.
we believe that we serve a purpose here. So we are going to start a new segment with the podcast, and we are going to be giving you a verse of the day so that you can apply to your own homestead or to your daily life, and hopefully you can glean something to help you out of that verse. And um, our verse for today comes from Ecclesiastes 11 and verse 6, and I'm going to read from the New International Version, and it reads as follows: Sow your seed in the morning and at evening. Let your hands not be idle, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. I think that's
There
a
you go.
great verse.
I love it. I love it. I mean, it's just words to think of to take you into your day. Just keep yourself busy and focused because you never know what's going to flourish and when it's going to flourish. So, yeah, I love
That's
it.
right.
I
I
love
mean,
it, Dale.
I, I think it is a great verse for no matter what season of life you're in, whether you are just starting to homestead, just starting to prep or prepare for life,
Mhm.
or you're in the middle of it, or you're in the end. It's such a good, um, verse to live by. You know,
Mhm.
um, it if we sit around and be idle, that you know we all know that there is a time for rest, but that
Mhm.
time isn't all the time. You
No,
know, we must
exactly.
do work, and how can we have a great harvest if we don't do the work to sow and to tend to that?
Yes. Yes. Yep.
And that kind of leads us back into our discussion that we've been having, right? About
Yes, I was gonna
livestock.
say that's like a great segue right into pick up from where we left off. I mean, that's perfect.
Exactly.
And we didn't even
Um,
plan that, people. We didn't even plan that. It just happened.
I'm telling you, there's very little planning that goes along with this podcast.
Yes. We're like, "Hi, what do you wanna do today?" "Okay, we gotta finish this." And that's it. And go.
Exactly.
Yes. So, okay.
So we left off talking about how we can utilize livestock for that tending or preparing areas to sow or improving those areas on our farm or homestead, right?
Yes, those areas that are quite difficult to manage. We have a lot of them here at Not for Nothing Homestead. We have a lot of red clay and a lot of um, rocks that you find. We're up in the mountainous area in North Georgia, so kind of the way that you were talking, about replenishing the hay or the straw, and then them packing it down, and I'll let you take it from there.
Well, so soil is made up, like you said, of clay, right? And what we consider topsoil, clay normally is underneath the topsoil. And what's
Mhm,
topsoil? Topsoil is the breaking down of organic material, right?
mhm. Yep.
Essentially, that breaking down of organic material is what every gardener loves to use. Black gold is
Mhm.
is you know um, compost, right? So
Yes.
we're going to use those animals, that livestock, to make our own compost, right?
Mhm.
So, um, if we talk about the Midwest, for those that don't know, I'm in Kansas, right? So
Yes.
in Kansas, the Midwest area, the Mississippi River Delta, what was known for here in the Wild West days was millions of head of buffalo, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so those buffalo, there was also millions of acres of grass, and they would trample and graze on that grass, and then they would leave behind the after effects.
Yeah.
And
We won't call it the
millions of
toilet.
years of that breakdown of that organic material is what stacked up to acres and acres and feet of topsoil, right?
Mm.
So
Yes.
when we use livestock on our homesteads or our farmsteads, and we trap them in a small area, the only thing we are doing is we are concentrating that livestock to one area to help along that process.
Mhm.
By adding that straw in there, and then them doing their business with all that straw,
Yes.
and eating up the seed bank and the weeds and things. We're just speeding up that
Rooting
process.
rooting everything
Rooting,
up, and they're basically, little tiny tillers.
they
Well,
are.
until they get bigger, and then they're big tillers, but
They're
yeah.
they're great big tillers, right?
Mhm, yes. I can't believe how strong their noses are in that clay. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
you can actually pound and pound and pound post hole diggers on a dry day,
Oh
and
yeah.
you'll be lucky if you can get down, a foot. And they can just in 10 minutes have it all rooted up for you, which is amazing.
For me, I get totally, you know, when I was younger, as most of us are, we take things for granted and we don't really think about, things like that.
Yeah.
But the older I get, the more faithful I get, the more I can appreciate God's true design.
Yes.
That God has designed the most perfect tillage
Mhm.
animal there is. Like
Yeah.
they do their job so efficiently, they're perfectly designed for it,
Yes.
you know? And when you think about it in that term, like you can't help but just be enamored with that.
Yeah, if you sit back and just really think about it, because I don't think there's a lot of other farm animals that do that. Cows don't do it.
Cows don't.
Like you said, chickens do it to an extent, but and they can get
Chickens
down pretty far, but it takes them a while. But
takes
the
them a while
pigs,
to do it. But
oh, the pigs
and
can do quick.
oh yeah. And that is why it's such um that's why it is so important that as a farmstead or a homestead that we must be diversified,
Hmm.
because you know each one of our livestock serve a different purpose on our homestead.
Hmm.
Um, and then each bit of our gardening also plays a different part. Just like a gardener plants different plants and rotates throughout their gardens to utilize what the next one in line, what the one
Yes.
previous to it laid down for it, or they work off of each other. We do the same thing on the homestead.
Mhm.
So as we go through and we start using pigs to clean up, say, the brambles, the brush,
Mhm. Yes.
those rocky areas,
And they
to
don't mind. They
they
don't
don't
charge
mind it.
much
They
at all.
love it. They love every bit of that, right?
Yes,
So
they
we can
do.
utilize them in there. And then ideally, if we can focus those chickens to follow them up, they can utilize what's left behind that's been uncovered.
Yes.
And
They'll kinda
contrary to,
level it all back out.
they can fill those holes back in. If you ain't ever watched a chicken, I don't know
Yeah.
what other word to call it. I
Do
used to
chicken
think,
things.
I'm like, why is that chicken doing chicken things? Like, and it kicks its feet backwards, and what are they doing? Well, again, we go back to, it's like a little field cultivator. It's just sitting
Mhm.
there working up, finding seed bank, eating it up, eating the bugs, everything else. And when it
Yes.
leaves an area, it's like all smoothed off and better off than what it was.
Yeah.
You're like,
It's almost like whoever invented the tiller followed the pig and said,
bingo.
"Hey, we'll make a bigger one, and then look, the chickens are a smaller size tiller, so we'll make a smaller size tiller like the chickens."
So, if you take, like, I know that you and Joey at the Not for Nothing homestead, you guys have a small tractor. We have a small
Mhm.
tractor.
Yes.
We can get implements and put on those tractors to, you know, do that kind of work,
Yes.
but that takes finances.
It's
That
fuel.
takes fuel, you
Not
know.
all of them come with a tiller, so that would be an
Exactly.
extra, an attachment that you would have to order.
So if we can utilize these animals in place
Mhm.
to do that,
Yes.
then we're going to get mutual benefit out of it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Now, when once you have, like, just say you rotate the pigs through, then the chickens through, just let's say one particular pasture area, then you have
Hmm.
to let that ground rest for a while
Yep.
because you don't want to plant on it right away.
You don't want pigs. So Joel Salatin, which everyone in the homesteading world has probably heard of or knows,
Yes.
um, and studied. I really like Joel's um, idea of that a pig will not hit a pastured area more than once in a year.
Okay.
You know, um, so they will work their way through that given area, and then it will rest for a year
Mhm.
from the pigs. That's
Yeah.
not saying we can't run other things on that,
Mhm.
to help it out.
Yeah.
But the pig doesn't come back for a year. Again, we
Yeah.
go back to, and I'm not reinventing the wheel. In fact, smart people like him are the ones that have helped me understand this whole
Mhm.
process. If we go back to those bison again, they only traveled through areas to find the tenderest grass or the most. They were constantly traveling, and it would go
Yes.
seasonally
Yeah.
once a year. Again, we come back to that, right?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and that also goes back to what you were saying about when you were younger, you couldn't appreciate those things, but now that you know the why and the
Mhm.
how it actually comes together, between all of them, it actually really resonates with you. It's
It
like when
does.
it sticks, you're like, "Man, I just had an epiphany. Somebody opened the door and I saw the light."
Well, exactly. And so I'm gonna twist a little mind blow on everyone here again. Let's talk about, I know the talks that you and I and Lisa and Joey, the four of us have had together, that you guys had feral hogs come through your area during times.
Mhm.
But it's
Yes.
only at a certain time of the year, correct?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So think about this again. We now have feral hogs who have become, wild hogs. So they're
Yes.
adapted to their environment.
Mhm.
They're not hanging out on the not for nothing homestead 24/7,
Mm-mm.
365.
No,
They
they were here for
travel
about
through,
an
yeah, I mean, they travel through
hour. Mhm.
once a year because there's one particular thing that they want there. So again, we go back to God's design and what
Yes.
is bred into those animals. So
Mhm.
how do we know when to move them to the next paddock? Well, I think we've already established that by now,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
when they start over tilling, when they start, um, it starts getting to be hard to keep them in a given area.
Mhm.
They're trying to tell you, hey, we need to move.
We need
We
some
need
more
something
ground to dig
else.
up.
We need
Yeah.
something else to keep us busy. They're a lot like a
Mhm.
toddler, right? If you don't
Yes.
keep a toddler busy 24/7, when they're awake, they're going to get into mischief. Same
Yes.
way with our livestock.
Yes.
So we utilize and we will move them. Now, how do we determine how many head that we can run on a given area or how long they're on that area? Ideally, we want to move them before they get to the point of destruction.
Yeah.
We want to move them no more than the light tillage starts,
Mhm.
then moving them to the next area.
Yeah.
That will then we won't have to have so much time for rest on those areas.
Mhm.
And at a given point, um, so if you start off with all brambles and brush and rock and clay, the day of having the cow or sheep or something that utilizes grass is probably not upon you. We're
Mhm.
going to have to go a while and let our pigs do their work, our chickens do the work,
Yes.
in between there. You know, um so I think we we can more than establish that that pig needs to. Now, also we help utilize that pasture that we're putting on by subsidizing feed to them, right? Providing
Yes.
feed to them.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we've talked before on here about that feed cost and I know that you've done a little more research with your feed, and so have I. So let's do
Yes.
a little comparison there between our feed
Okay.
costs.
All right. So I bought the local feed store that I go to. I bought their brand of just what they call swine feed. It's put pellet
Yeah.
feed, and it is 14.99 a bag. So basically $15. And I bought 2 bags, so that was 30 dollars. And then I bought 1 bag of cracked corn because I mix it like 2 to 1. Um, and in the beginning, I was just doing the pellet feed, but
Hmm.
then we started doing the mix as almost like a supplement and a filler as well. Now that's only like $2 cheaper for a bag. So basically, I spent $13 on the cracked corn and then 30. So that's $43 for 3 50-pound bags. And I've got still a good bit left, but I just got that on November 27th. So,
So
and today is December 2nd.
yeah, so you're doing a good job. So you're hand feeding yours, right? So you're feeding them twice a day,
Yes.
um, hand feeding, which
Yes.
I think is the best, honestly.
Mhm.
Um, as long as they're not teeny tiny guys. Like,
Yeah.
so if we talk about my domestic terrorist, as I
You're
lovingly call them,
7
seven,
people.
the seven noses of disaster. Um, we We got them when they were very small, like very, very small.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're under 125 pounds on them, they probably need more of a full feed, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I always start them off on a self feeder. Now, once they get close to that 100-pound mark, they will start trying to eat you out of house and home.
Mm-hmm.
And
And how
that's the
much
point.
did you pay for your feed?
That's I was just getting ready to say that's kind of the point I was getting to.
Oh,
Is
sorry.
no, you're fine. Is so I went to the big box TSC, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, to buy some feed today. And so I bought the hog grower pelleted feed, just like you were saying, a
Mm-hmm.
15% pellet. But I also bought 2 bags of cracked corn. Now,
Okay.
the pelleted feed currently is $19.99 a bag.
Mm.
Now, if we go back 3 weeks ago, that was $29 a bag.
Same bag?
Same bag.
It dropped 10
It's
bucks?
dropped $10 in 3 weeks.
Wow.
Now,
At the same big box store.
at the same big box store.
That's
So,
nuts.
um, so if I now what I do is similar to what you're doing. I mix 2 to 1 with the pellets and the corn now. Now, when they were
Mhm.
little, I did nothing but the pellets, and I actually did a higher protein than 15.
Okay.
I was doing an 18%
Yeah.
because they need that extra protein.
I was gonna say,
Now,
I got mine in the spring, so we were
uh-huh.
still having some really chilly nights, and they were tiny.
Hmm.
So, yeah, they needed all of that they could get to keep their body temperature up.
That's right. You got to keep
Yeah.
that body temp up, and that's how they get it is through calories,
Mhm.
through that feed. But
Yes.
so I mix that together. And yes, both of us, by mixing that cracked corn in there, we're diluting that protein down some. But again, we go back to that filler, you
Mhm.
know. Um, and
It's
now
like
that
beans for people, okay?
exactly it is beans or it's bread.
Yes, that was the filler for your tummy. If
Yeah,
you didn't have
exactly.
a lot of if you didn't have a lot of protein, beans or bread was your filler.
So um, we're both doing the same thing. And now that mine are to that 100 to 115 pound area, somewhere around that. Now we are going through 50 pounds per day.
Oh my gosh.
So
Oh my so what I just bought would only last you 3 days
3 days.
for those 7
What I
okay.
just bought would be 3 days worth of feed. So that's $50 worth. It's actually 40. What I paid for mine was 45.97. So $45 worth. $45 for every 3 days. Um, I don't know about you all in your homestead, but I can't do that. I can't afford to do that. I
Yeah,
want my own good quality meat, but that's just ridiculous. We can't
yeah,
do that. So uh, we are going to have to start utilizing more pasture. We're going to move them around more so they can get more from the ground. They can
mhm,
eat up more brambles, they can eat up more brush, they can
mhm,
utilize that grass, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to go to the hand feeding so
okay,
that we can regulate their feed.
yeah,
Um, we want we want them to continually grow, but we're at the stage in their life that they need to grow frame. They need to grow
yes.
bone, they need to grow body, and then that way we can finish them out towards the end. We'll
Now how old are
increase.
they now?
I would have to look back. I'm gonna say ours are about 3 months, 3 to 4 months old now.
I was just gonna say that, like, 3 months ago is when you got them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they, and it's a hard lesson for a lot of, say, us, where we come from our world where we used to be show pig people. So we
Mhm.
were all about, or even a commercial confinement operation. They're all about as fast as they can to get that pig
Yes. Yes.
to um, harvest weight.
Like you're saying, they don't care about frame.
They
They
don't
just
care
want 'em to
about that.
get they want 'em to get a big old belly.
They
Uh,
want them to get they want them to get a big butt and a big belly. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly, and big top. And I'm all about that. Um, but the quality of the meat by slow growing them, letting their frame grow and let them become larger bodied, larger framed, and a more realistic growth pattern, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, allows for a higher meat quality.
Yeah.
So that's why we slow them down.
Yeah.
Um,
It's not
now,
like the, what do they call the new chicken breasts are like, they're
yeah,
like
so
blowed up.
yeah, we could talk about chickens for 3 episodes of the difference between a Cornish cross chicken and a heritage breed chicken and what makes them completely different. And at some point, we are going to talk about that
Yes. Oh,
conversation.
yes. Yeah.
But um,
No, I meant
you,
how they're just like fast growing chickens. They're
they're
like boom,
extremely
one
fast.
and done, and
That's that's why
off.
everyone loves them because they're young. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're essentially eating veal chicken, baby
Yes.
chickens.
Yes.
They're little
The
bitty.
tender,
They're
yeah.
young. They're tender. Yep, we can get into all that.
Yeah.
So um, I go back to I told Ginger this story one day. I grew up, feeding hogs, and then when I was in high school, I actually took a job with a large hog operation.
Mhm.
So, and they didn't utilize pasture or anything like that. Everything was confinement, everything was in buildings.
Mm.
And, you know, everyone tries to make that out as that there was something um evil or greed drove that or whatever. And whatever factor you want to get into, the real truth of the factor is the confinement operation, the concrete operation, the buildings, all of that was more because they were limiting their losses from health, from like
Mhm.
diseases, stuff
Mhm.
like that. They could
Yeah.
they could keep those animals cool. It was a good way to pump lots of feed through them, not necessarily antibiotics or anything like that. In fact,
Yeah.
those type of operations instead that it took less medicine because you had a more healthy herd, you know,
Yes.
because they were never exposed to the environment. You know, a
Yes.
lot of those
Yeah.
operations you had to shower in, shower out, and you had your own set of clothes that stayed right there, you know.
Yeah. I was
Um,
like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah,
but
I had to
anyway,
shower when I," so, yeah.
yeah. So the the story that I was telling Ginger was, we would have pens with 25 to 30 head of uh, fat hogs, growing hogs that were getting close to harvest weight, and
Mhm.
they had a feeder. Well, I'm going to tell you, if you did have a sickness, if you had one that, God forbid, expired or passed away,
Mhm.
or if the feeder run out, they would look at their buddy next to them and say, "Hey, you're a lot weaker than everybody else. Guess what?"
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
they would devour him. If
Ah.
you ever had one that expired, you would come back the next morning, and the only thing that would be left in the pen would be the skull, the head, because they couldn't get their mouth around it to crunch the bones.
Ah.
Every bit of the rest of him, hide, bones,
Mhm.
everything was gone.
Yes, and that
Gone.
just freaked me. I was like, "Really?" But the other thing about that you told me is the tail thing.
Yeah, that's the reason everybody always want to know, why do commercial hogs not have tails? Are they bred that way? Or are they born that way? Well, they're born with a tail just like all the rest of them. a curly Q tail, long.
Mm-hmm.
But they dock them off. And why do they dock them off? Well, it's to keep them from chewing on that tail or from that tail starting to bleed, because once it starts to bleed, that promotes cannibalism for them
Yes.
to start eating one another.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they docked tails, you know.
And
Um,
that
that's
really
also
kind of
ear notches,
freaked
if you
me
will.
out.
Yep. So, in other words, don't fall down in your pig pen.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's a lesson learned.
Don't
Yeah. I mean, not lesson learned, but lesson heard.
lesson
How about that?
learned. Don't
Well, remember when
exactly.
not when Daisy got her head stuck, when Daisy got her foot stuck not too long ago, and her foot,
Yeah.
it got the fence went right between her hoof and where her leg actually starts, and it actually got knit
Yep.
like hung in there, and I mean it just went down to where it scraped her, almost like you or I would get like a paper cut or something a little deeper. And
Yeah.
she bled, and Link and Wilbur were right there with her. And so of course we were wanting to get, blue coat on it. We got the blue coat on it, and everything, stopped, and the she was all good. She limped for a couple of days, but she went back to it. But I mean, Dale was saying, well, yeah, because once they see that weak one, or they smell that blood, or they taste that blood, and I just kept thinking, oh, Daisy, don't bleed, girl, because they're gonna take you out.
they're gonna
Oh
be
my
like they're gonna be like snitches get stitches and
Yes,
lie in
exactly.
ditches.
Well, and the tail thing, when you said that, it made sense because you've got, you know, 50 hogs in one small, or pigs, grow out pigs in one
In a
small area.
small fenced area.
You got all these little tails wagging around, and your neighbor may just come up and say, "Oh, that looks like something to play with." And then next thing you know,
Well,
in the morning, there's
again,
no
we
more
go
you.
back to why we move them on the pasture. Yeah, exactly. And why we're moving them around and why we keep them
Mhm.
moved is to keep them entertained. Well, you trap them inside of a very small environment like that, they got to entertain themselves somehow.
Yes,
And
exactly.
you know, that's not saying that I'm not making them human like. I'm just saying, they have they can't just eat and sleep. They have to do
No.
something throughout the day,
Yeah,
you know.
they are rooters, and if
But
they can't, I mean, if you've left them no ground left to root, then they're gonna start picking on their neighbor. Basically.
bingo.
So do you
Exactly.
wanna wrap that up today for what we have? We're, like,
Yeah,
at 30,
let's go ahead. So
34 minutes.
yeah, so so I think, those hogs, we'll utilize those on pasture, and we will continue that feeding operation until we get to a harvest weight. So
Mhm.
harvest weight is different for others, but to me, anything from 250 pounds and up is a good harvest weight.
So
Some people,
they're
depends on
about
your,
halfway there.
mine are, yes.
Yes. Yeah,
So
that's good.
depends on your breed of hog also. So if you have a cooney influence,
Mhm.
or some of these smaller breeds, that could all of a sudden become a 200-pound is like a
Okay.
really big. Or say you have an American guinea hog, that's 175 pound is like big. That's like a finished hog, you know.
Yeah, wow.
Um, on the commercial side, like where I'm at, utilizing these commercial breeds, to me, I don't want anything to do with one until it's 300 pounds plus.
Yeah.
It's just there's not enough fat cover. There's not. There's not enough intermuscular fat bred into those breeds,
Mhm.
unless you're getting into a Berkshire, a Duroc, something along that lines that typically is a higher quality meat.
Yeah.
But anyway,
So,
we will continue that operation until we achieve that weight, and then it's time to
okay.
harvest.
But what you going back to your feeding, you're going right now at this point because of what they are consuming, you are gonna go from a gravity fed to hand feeding.
We're going to go to hand feeding. And
Okay.
then we are
Okay.
going to start the process of hand feeding and allowing them to let their frame grow. And then
Mhm.
as those bigger ones start surfacing, those hogs that have an accelerated growth curve, so their
Mhm.
frame starts looking like I'm going to be close to the end of this growth pattern, we will
Mhm.
break those away on their own, let the smaller ones move, continue feeding them on that growth feed pattern, and
Mhm.
those outliers or those fast growers will then be transitioned back into a finish program. So a
Okay.
finish feeding. So our protein will get way lower because we want to
Mhm.
promote fat. We
Mhm.
want to promote them to start laying conditioning on and quit laying bone structure and muscle. We want them to get to a conditioned level for the quality of the meat that we're going to. And
Yeah.
so if we're talking homestead and utilizing snoot to tail, we
Mhm.
need that fat to make lard. We need that
Yes.
leaf lard to make cooking lard. We want we want enough cover on their belly to make bacon.
Mhm.
So we want to utilize every bit of that. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing. So we're going to want like a 12% protein feed to go along with that
Okay.
and finish them out with 12 to 14%. So
Okay.
there are all kinds of feed calculators out there that you can use, and you can determine what your percentage of your feed is if you're doing your own mixing of feed, or you can
Mhm.
utilize your local feed store and look for that low percentage feed
Yeah.
to
And
promote
does
that.
that corn factor into the protein? It
Corn
just
is
takes away from it.
so corn is the base of all feed. All processed feed is corn based. Um,
Mhm.
so that's your base ingredient. And um, corn is a basic carbohydrate that also is a protein source both for that animal. That's why we
Okay.
feed the corn.
Yeah.
Um, I think some people have really got things construed about feeding grains or corn or grains period to animals. Um, if you put a pile of grain out in the middle of 160 acres and you turn animals loose, those animals are going to go to that pile of corn.
They're gonna
They're
find
going
it.
to find it.
Yes, they are.
They're going to eat it.
Mhm.
So I don't want to be told that I'm poisoning them by making them eat that.
Yeah.
That's what they want to eat. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
They're gonna
Um,
find it
now we can
either
factor they're going to find it.
yeah.
So they're going to we can factor science in there all day of the health benefits of one or the other. I just know
Mhm.
for my operation and my experience, there's no more efficient way to grow protein than using it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right. Well, that is going to round it up for this week at 9 Acres of Nothing podcast.
And I think just I think from the talk that Ginger and I have had, I think this is going to become an every other week podcast, not a weekly
Hmm.
podcast.
Yeah.
The 9 Acres of Nothing. Now,
Yes.
stay tuned. There may be other episodes mixed in because we've had talks with lots of other people. But
Yes.
this one, I think we're going to utilize every other week.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. I think that works
guys,
out for
always
both of our
remember
schedules.
uh, it does. It does.
Yeah.
So, I think we want to make sure that everyone remembers that weekly verse or that
I
every
love it.
verse of every podcast from this point forward.
Yes.
Yes. So remember
Today's
that
is my favorite.
Ecclesiastes 11:6.
Hmm.
I think that, I could easily see that be applied to a verse of this podcast.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
love this verse.
Yeah, I do too. It
So
seems
anything else?
so. No, that's it. Just our usual sign off. We'll see you next time, and go grow your homestead,
Grow your
guys.
homestead.
Yes.
Go grow it. Get it.
Yeah.
What are you waiting on? Get off of here and go grow your homestead.
Get
See
on
you
after
guys.
it. Bye, guys. God bless.